The series is called Leaving for Good, and it highlights professionals who have left New Mexico for more opportunities, better wages, and what they feel are safer environments. Albuquerque Business First attempts to put a face on the fact that we're the only state in the Southwest where more people have left than have moved here. The paper asked about a dozen former New Mexicans why they left. Some were transplants, however, some were lifelong residents who found it painful to leave, but they felt they had no choice. They range from young workers looking for a career ladder to entrepreneurs who didn't find the support and the infrastructure they needed to flourish. We have talked often at this table about the state's economic woes, but if people have lost hope that it will ever get better, what does that mean for New Mexico's future? Here to weigh in on this and other news of the week is attorney Sophie Martin. Also back at the table is regular Rob Nicoleski of the New Mexico Watchdog. Joining us once again is Javier Benavides, who I'm now proud to say his new job is Executive Director of the Southwest Organizing Project. Congratulations. And with us again is Rachel Sams, editor of the Albuquerque Business First. Rachel, let me start with you, of course. A very brave series. I find this whole thing fascinating. We're going to talk about some of the individual folks that Dennis Domzalski from your staff has interviewed for this. But what was the driving impetus to do this in the first place? What happened in your executive meetings to say, we're going to do this and see what happens? What happened there?
Definitely. Dennis has spent the better part of the past year just covering New Mexico's economic challenges. And every time he goes deeper into this issue, he sort of peels away a layer and gets to something else. He got really interested in the issue of outmigration, which is, just as you said, the fact that more people are leaving New Mexico than coming in, and that we're the only southwestern state experiencing that. And Gone for Good was a way to try and put a face on that trend and talk to some of these people behind those census figures and see why they're leaving. And overwhelmingly, across all the people that Dennis talked with, the main reasons were economic opportunity, feeling like they couldn't get beyond a certain point in their career, that their earning power was diminished here, and also crime. And they weren't talking about recent APD use of force type of issues. They were more just talking about they felt the level of crime in Albuquerque on a daily basis was unacceptable for their families, which really surprised me.
Interesting. House breaks or B&Es or whatever they call them was a thread in part of that crime thing. Very interesting. Rob Nicoleski, what did you take away from this when you read? What are the common threads that you hear when you've read some of these profiles? What jumped out at you?
The thing that surprised me, I guess maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, was the fact that so many people mentioned crime and that they mentioned safety. You'd heard so many times in the past year or so about the economy being down in the dumps, and you get thinking about, that seemed to be the overarching theme. But then when you get down and you dig a little bit deeper and you see that there's crime issues there. I do know that from talking, this is purely anecdotal, but just talking to some business people. I remember talking to a surgeon in Santa Fe a couple of years ago who worked at one of the hospitals, and she said that the main issue that the hospital had was getting lower level staffing consistently in there. Again, this is anecdotal, but she said, so many times we don't get a whole lot of people showing up on Monday because they're hungover from the weekend, and they don't come in on Friday because they're getting ready for the weekend. So I think it's a multi-layered issue, but I think the fact that you're able to draw out some issues such as crime really drives home the point.
Javier Benavides, congratulations again on your new position. I think it's terrific.
Thanks, Gene.
Now, the idea that you guys have been working on issues of economic development in your own way for a lot of years here, and there's always this tension point when it comes to talent in a local community. If you're talented, you're going to be wanted in other places besides your hometown. Do you stay and fight the fight, or do you leave? There's a righteous decision that has to be made, it seems to me. You've had these kind of opportunities, I'm sure, to leave or to stay. What's your personal take on this?
No, it's a good point. I left to California and then came back. And the reason I came back is because New Mexico is a beautiful place, and so many, I think about the people who can't leave, who don't have that mobility. Who have deep family ties, they depend upon family, deep history. But I also think about so much that drove me back was what I love about New Mexico. I mean, the culture, the history, the beautiful landscape. And I think we've got amazing assets that we have to build upon. So, this came up with the Tesla debate about trying to recruit an employer from outside and looking to spend over $500 million on that. Well, let's look at a long-term strategy because there are other models of growing the economy. Education's a great example. If we can spend $500 million on Tesla, why not on early childhood education? Because those are the kids that are our future leaders and future scientists and researchers. And they could end up at the University of New Mexico or Sandia National Laboratories working on clean energy, because we've got a lot of promise there with our natural resources too. So I'm a little more hopeful, and
You're bullish.
it's going to take some work.
You're bullish on things here for the future, aren't you?
Not going anywhere.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But these are all personal decisions, Sophie Martin, aren't they?
And
It's very difficult.
I think one of the things that we're experiencing right now is that New Mexico has been slower than other states in the country, than really every other state in the country, to recover from the recession. And so people who, and I'm seeing this amongst my peers, people who during the recession thought, well, I would like to switch jobs, but I see that there's no hiring happening across the country, certainly no hiring happening here, I can wait. We saw that kind of people holding on to the jobs that they had. Well, opportunities are opening up in other places and not opening up here, and so people who thought I will wait for the recession to be over, I will wait for the recovery, are seeing that in order to change jobs, that really means looking to Portland, to Denver, out to the East Coast, to the South. And that's where they're able to get those new jobs that will afford them more opportunities, better income, et cetera. It means dealing with a different dynamic for their families. It may be more expensive to live there. There are different issues. They don't have family nearby. But they're making these really, it seems to me, rational decisions. I'm going to go where the economy has picked up. Now, as New Mexico improves, I would expect to see a little shift, maybe not people moving back, but shift people moving in. But that hasn't happened yet.
Interesting. Rob, Tesla just came up. We did not get the business, as they say, in the world of sales, but I've always felt like there was something else at play here for us in this Tesla thing, that we weren't actually supposed to get the business. What we were doing was an exercise in how to be competitive. What do you feel about that?
I thought that Nevada was going to get this deal from the very beginning. They had too many things working in their favor. First of all, I used to live in the Reno area for 7 years. It's right on the California border. They've got a direct shot. There's a train that can take, presumably, the lithium batteries back and forth from the Tesla plant in Fremont, California. It's already a right to work state that's already in place. They've already, it's a state with no state income tax. They had a lot of things go into their advantage. You can take a look at the fact, I guess you can look at it glass half full, glass half empty. You could say, well, at least we were in the top 4 originally.
What do you think we learned from the exercise? Did you sense we came away with a better, sharper knife on our economic development efforts?
It's hard to say
of this?
because the negotiations were secret and the Tesla people were telling all the competing states, we don't want you to talk about this stuff. I think that it's probably a marginal plus for New Mexico that at least we were in the competition, but I thought all along Nevada was going to get it, and they did.
Yeah, interesting. Do I understand, Rachel, that you perhaps are thinking about the idea of talking to some folks who decided to stay here, as a matter of fact, instead of leave? Is that something you guys have discussed as well? And what would you think about that?
I would say that we'd certainly be open to that. We have had some people ask that question, and one thing that I would say is that in our regular course of business, we talk to a lot of leaders who are very bullish on New Mexico all the time and have a viewpoint that is extremely bullish on the state and on the city, and we want to make sure that we're showing, kind of every aspect of the discussion. We get that viewpoint a lot from the people that we cover regularly. Most of them, their job is to promote New Mexico as a place to do business, and I think a lot of them truly believe that that is the case, that this place offers more advantages than disadvantages.
Given that, I'm curious what your series has done to those folks. I'm sure they're still bullish. I'm not sure. I doubt they would be, at the edge of the cliff because of this. But is there a reality check you're sensing as well for folks who are bullish about New Mexico? Did it cause them to say, okay, maybe we have some work to do about other things that they may not have considered previously?
It's gotten a lot of discussion going kind of on all sides. There have been some people who've said, why weren't you while talking to the people who have stayed here and kind of focusing on that viewpoint. And there were other people who are very bullish on New Mexico who looked at the series and said, well, this brought out some issues that maybe I hadn't thought about before. So the reaction has really kind of run the gamut.
I have to say, again, congratulations. It's a very brave series. I think it's really terrific. I saw some old friends in there. It kind of hurts when you see people that you know. It was really a good read, though, honestly. Up next, we discuss campus sexual assault.